Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. Looks like, hang on for a second, let me pull our chat up here so that I can talk to you guys. I kind of am racing around at the last second trying to get everything together tonight because I have a whole bunch of things that I was prepping to share with you, and I may have lost track of time along the way. So, in the meantime, we can go ahead here and get started and we can talk about our 20th design journal. I didn't count last week as sort of a crossover event with Heath, and that was awesome to do. If you haven't seen that, I'll be posting a link in the Kickstarter update that I'll be posting later tonight, or probably more like early tomorrow morning, and I'll be sending that. But at any rate, welcome everyone. Great to have everybody here. I'm going to start with the usual news, mail call, all of that good stuff. Tell you some of the fun, geeky stuff I've been doing on my own. Heath, hey, good to see you, buddy. Heath's Geekverse. Definitely go see that crossover and watch some of the other things too. He's got a ton of awesome stuff there. So I'm going to start out with mail call because I'm very excited about this. I almost didn't have a mail call this week, which I was like, oh, nothing has come in. There's no pre-orders that I've been impatiently waiting for, but one did arrive, and here we go. Yep, I got my Marvel Multiverse role-playing game. I'm super excited about this, and if you look at the bottom, none other than Matt Forbeck, one of the consulting designers for Cool Name RPG. This is his book, baby. This is his game. It's awesome. It's very cool. He's at Gen Con right now running games of the Marvel Multiverse. I did make a suggestion at one point that maybe he should dress up like Arcade to run his games. I'm not sure if he went with that or not. Got the white disco suit and the red wig and everything, but we'll see if any pictures come out of him like that. I actually thought it'd be pretty cool, like get an old pinball machine, right? And actually move your minis around and do like a battle scene on it. Be awesome. Anyway, a little bit of geeking out for the Marvel fans out there. The other thing too is, I've been reading my Marvel comics. I am up to December of 1979. Things are starting to get to the points where I remember some of the stories, but more because I read back a little ways and bought old comics when I was younger. But making my way through the entire Marvel Comics library, I dread the day that I get up into the era where there's like 80 different book titles every single month, and I have to sit there and try to figure out how to get through them, but we'll see. Also, reading a little Gray Mantle, old school fantasy, very cool. I don't actually know very much about John Morrissey, the author. To be fair, I just never read John Morrissey, and folks suggest that I take a look. I usually try to make sure I'm reading folks who are good people, who do good things. Hopefully John Morrissey is. But regardless, in the meantime, this is a great fantasy story. I'm having a good time reading that. So beyond those things, let's get talking about Cool Name RPG, where you don't have a ton of new things to talk about because we're mid playtest at the moment, but I do have some things that I'm going to share and some show and tell as well. So one of the first things I wanted to talk about is a survey that I know folks are waiting for. I promised I would have it end of this week, and I should be putting it out this weekend. So we should be on track for that. I'd hope to get a little earlier for some of the folks who wanted to just record their stuff while they were thinking about it. Apologize to those of you who wanted to do that. Just wasn't possible, in part because I tapped the expertise of someone, and that someone is Stephen Kellner. He has a PhD in motivational psychology. He's done a lot of surveys over the years for his academic work and in his efforts to understand what motivates artists and writers. And I actually was able to reach out to him and get some really, really cool feedback from him about ways to motivate folks or ways to write a really good survey. I've also talked about motivation in the past, but how to write an amazing survey and how to get the best possible answers. I want to share a little bit of the feedback he gave me, and I'll be using this in the survey. No secrets here of where we try to trick people or anything. But one of the things he pointed out is that if you ask for a numeric rating, sometimes that's a lot harder for people to try to choose from than if you ask for something like very easy or really difficult. Those are things people can wrap their heads around. Numbers, not so much. And I think that was a really interesting piece of feedback because I do often just think I'll just put a range of numbers, 1 to 5, pick the one. And that was just a really great piece of advice. And, like I've always said, one of my goals here is to educate all of you guys as well so that you can learn from our experience. So that was really an interesting piece of information, and you're going to see that in the survey when you get it. Another thing that he pointed out that I thought was really important was the danger of accidentally asking two questions instead of one, and then asking for a single answer, right? So you might say something like, "Hey, is this game fast and easy?" People are like, well, it was fast. I don't know if it was easy. We had to learn it first, but then it was fast. I thought that was a great piece of advice that's easy to overlook, is this idea that you could ask too many questions at once and then put the person responding into paralysis trying to figure out what the heck you really are asking for and how to best answer that question. So I thought that was also really cool advice. So actually what I ended up doing was pulling back the survey and just sort of reviewing it with his points in mind and looking to how to make really crisp and simple answers. Now, I'm hoping to get to work with him some more in the future and get some more feedback from him, because for the future surveys as well, because one of the important things to me with this survey is that if you guys are all taking the time to fill this out, you're all taking the time to read this, to give us your feedback, that we are asking for it in a way that we're getting the most valuable feedback we can, so we can really use it when we're looking at how we're going to revise this first set of playtest rules. So before we move on, though, Stephen Kellner, amazing guy. His wife's a fantastic author as well. But Stephen Kellner has a book that I want to share with you, just because anytime someone is willing to donate their time to help us out, I like to donate a little of our time to help them out. This is one of his books. I have a copy of this book. It's excellent. A really good book about motivating your writing. So if you're a writer or a game designer or a game writer, here's a book for you to consider taking a look at. It's a great book, and just some really good insights in there for anyone looking to, we all know how hard it is sometimes to sit down at that keyboard and start plucking away and getting the work done. So definitely take a look at that. I'm going to copy that into the comments as well, so that you can find it and take a look at it. But yeah, really very cool stuff. And I'm looking forward to getting more advice from him in the future, because it's exactly the sort of stuff we need for this. So that said, let's go talk a little bit more about Cool Name RPG stuff and about the playtest. So first off, I didn't talk about what game my friends and I have been playing in our regular game this week, because I am actually, we're going to be playing a bit of Cool Name for a while. We've decided to take our Simbaroom game. I always never sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but push that game off to the side temporarily and focus a little bit on Cool Name. Now, I'm already running some playtests, but I'm really excited about running this with my pals who I've been gaming with since college, because I know their styles of play. I know what they do and what they gravitate towards, and I'm interested to see how those known behaviors come out at the game table when they start playing Cool Name. And we've already done some, so I've gotten some pretty cool things already. And before I go on, Doug, hey Doug, thanks for joining tonight. Just spotted you popping in there. Yeah, so one of the things that we did find, at least at our table, and now keep in mind that this is our table and our experience, and I'm going to want to hear what your experience is, but we did not have trouble with the tables, and we have not had trouble with the tables. We've continued to use these tables for quite some time. The 10 action score table with the dice. We've been using it, and it's been going actually amazingly fast. Now, this is a group of guys who I played Earthdawn with for 3 years. We used a very similar table. I think there's probably a bias there, but I also do believe that it's pretty straightforward and simple, especially based on some of the feedback I've heard from other folks. So far, people aren't struggling with the table at the moment. Some people are finding it easier than others. Some are getting a little bit bumped. You're bumping on it, right? It's slowing them down a little bit. Others aren't having any trouble at all. I haven't had anyone say, "Oh my God, we can't even play the game," right? And I say that, I'm not joking when I say that, because honestly, that could come back, right? We told you all from the beginning that we're working through this process with you guys, and we were ready to hear that as a possible response. But fortunately, good news is that is not what we have been running into at all. We've actually been getting a really great response from folks, and I'm super happy with that. Now, another thing that I really like that we've been running into is, first off, one of the playtesters actually sent me and I'm not going to name them by name because I forgot to ask if it was okay to give them kudos for their incredibly cool feedback. And you don't have to do this, by the way. It's okay if you don't. They gave me turn by turn playtest feedback on how the game played out. Absolutely amazing stuff. I mean, like I said in the documents, every bit of feedback is good, but that was super cool. And at some point, if they're okay with it, I'm going to give them like points, house points for taking the time to do that, because that really proved useful to me as I was reading through it. I felt like I was there at the table with them as they were playing through it. Now, some of the things that came out of their playtest that I want to share a little bit of. First off, one of the things that came out of their playtest, and I've seen this in a lot of the playtests so far, is an unbelievable amount of creativity at the table. Some of this I attribute to the fact that we have so few rules right now that people have to be creative at the table. In some ways, I'm excited to get the rules hammered out. In other ways, I love what comes out of the table when there's no guidelines on what you can and can't do. We had one person who was playing with some kids, and the kids were able to pick it up, it sounds like. They were actually making up their own MOs. Now, if you don't know what an MO is, if you haven't gotten to read through the playtest, that's a modus operandi, right? We're using this as a placeholder for classes and skills. You just have a single modus operandi like fighter, and whenever you need to do something, you take your fighter score and add it to your attribute score, right? So looking at this, yeah, they were coming up with cool things. Like one of the ones I want to share was they had Chief Biter, which I can only imagine what the Chief Biter is. The Catrobat, which was awesome, and then a Hatsune Miku, and which I probably pronounced that horribly wrong, but you can forgive me for that. Anyway, very cool that they're like going, well, we just want to make up our own MOs. I'm like, that's amazing, right? What a blast that had to be. And sadly, it sounds like Chief Biter did not make it through the adventure, died after eating a rat. It happens to the best of us, Chief Biter. You know, we feel for you. The other thing too is that I saw people resolving problems in really creative ways, and not just the players, but the GMs. For example, there was a situation that was described where warriors jumping in to attack a couple of goblins, right? So one of the people running it said, yeah, you can try it, but I'm going to add the defense of the goblins together. So for you to jump in and smash both goblins, you're going to have to get their defense. I'm like, that's a really clever solution, right? Another solution for that was someone said they were going to do a cleave, where if you hit the first goblin, it's a little bit harder. They increase the difficulty score. But if you hit the first goblin, the leftover points go to the next goblin. And because we have this sort of open scale for points, it was just very cool to see that stuff. I will admit that for myself, when I was doing conversions, I found it very easy to do. And I am so excited about the stuff that we could build with this. So I will say that so far, this core mechanic seems to be working. So for those of you who aren't big fans of it, I just want to tell you that so far it does actually seem to be working out. But I think that we can keep tweaking this and adding features and functionality to it that'll let people do some very, very cool customization. So I want to take a look here. And there's a question that came up. So let me pull that up here. I'm going to share it with you. I think this is talking about surveys. Is this game fast to learn? Is this game fast to play once it's learned? Is this game easy to learn? Yeah, it's a very interesting thinking about wording your questions. And this is something that I put a lot more time into. How do you word your questions to get an answer without having to ask multiple questions at once? How do you focus in on a single experience within the game, right? And that was from Heath asking, who shared this. But yeah, it is very interesting. So going back now to talk again a little bit more about the game. I think that's one of the coolest things that I saw come out of this. There were players using magic. Like we saw this at our table too, because there's no actual magic rules. People were just trying all sorts of crazy spells. And magic was, I've used my example of the Avengers climbing a wall. You've probably all heard it before. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but the short version is that they don't all make climbing rolls. Scarlet Witch makes a magic roll to get up there. Hulk makes a strength roll. Captain America is probably the only one who makes an athletics roll because that's his thing. Hawkeye is going to make a archery roll because he's firing an arrow with a rope on the end of it, right? They're each making a different sort of roll. Well, with the wide open sort of play that we have right now, because we have so few rules, we saw a lot of that, and it was super cool. Mages using cool spells to resolve problems, and it didn't really unbalance the game, right? If the mage went out there and cast a spell, it wasn't really going to break the game, especially if the GM does a decent job of adjudicating. It just worked. We didn't have to have a limit. We didn't have to have spell points. It was just a lot of fun. And so one of the things that I'm probably going to be looking at is some form of module that uber simplifies the core rules, that lets you just get in there and play this style of game on the fly with a group of people who maybe don't know anything about gaming, who don't need to learn a lot about gaming, and you can have just a few stats on a sheet of paper and roll some dice and have a good time. So that, I think, is going to be very cool to see play out. All right, let me look at some of my other notes here. I took notes so I wouldn't forget things for telling folks. We talked about the sheer creativity that comes out of it. Oh, another example of creativity that grows out of this that I want to show you guys. Character sheets, right? So we all there's no actual character sheet for the game yet. So what we've got is we've got a great examples of people just throwing together their own character sheets. This was a picture from my game table. I put out an action score chart, just sort of blew it up for folks, but you can see we're kicking it old school, right? Piece of graph paper, stats written on there, just good old fashioned draw your own character sheet with a pencil on the paper. A lot of cool stuff there. Then here's another one that one of our folks made. This is somebody made this and put this together for their team. This is one of their characters, right? So this is a very cool Night Bloodwalker. I don't know what that is, but that's awesome. I'm so glad they came up with that. What a cool thing to add into the game very quickly and easily. And so there's another character sheet idea. And yet here's another character sheet, right? Everyone is coming up with these really cool, simple character sheets and sharing them out. And I mean, it's just such a blast to see. And I think the reason why I'm so excited about this, I've probably seen especially geeked out about character sheets and people just making stuff up. But it's because for me, this is what I want Cool Name to do. I want Cool Name to inspire people to create a wealth of amazing stuff. I don't care if it's character sheets or minis or drawings or adventures or rules modules. I can't wait to see us all creating cool stuff and sharing it with one another, because to me, that's what this is about at the end of the day. It was always about this, giving this away to the world so we could create as much cool stuff as possible with what we've got. So thank you to everyone who's been sharing so far. Thank you to everyone who's sent me feedback and details about their games. This has been exceptional so far in terms of how this is all working. Now, I'm going to now go a little bit off the beaten path. I probably should pull out my warning here. Let me see. Brainstorm warning. Just warn you guys, this is not final stuff that I'm going to be talking about here. What we're talking about is just the stuff that I've been working on in the background, because I do still want to hear the feedback from everyone, but I also know that we need to move forward more quickly than we have. We ran into a lot of bumps early on in terms of difficult things that I didn't realize were going to be so difficult, but I now want to keep us rolling along, right? So one of the things that I want to talk about is the skill system. I have been working on the skill system. There was on Discord an amazing skill circle that was created that shows primary top level skills and then breaking those out and then breaking those out again. That is this type of a skill system that I'm looking at right now, so that you can basically take as many circles out as you want to get into detail in your game. So if you want a real simple game, you can just use the middle circle of skills. And if you want a more complex game, you go out 2 levels, and you could even go out 3 levels. The other thing that I've been working on, because I'd like to see people play test this, is something we've talked about a lot here, which are skill feats, which is a very cool sort of trick that you can do with your skill that other people can't, that allows you to do something cool. Like a real goofy example, right, is the old punch the jukebox and it starts playing, right? Maybe you've got a luck ability, or maybe you've got an electronic skill, but you take a stunt a skill stunt or whatever we end up calling it that lets you do that cool trick all the time. And most people can't do that, but that's your thing, right? You walk over, you smack the jukebox on the way in, the music kicks in, and you walk in looking incredibly awesome, right? So that's one of the things that I'm working on as well. So I'm getting all of that put together so we can have more of a skill system in place. Now, I'm not looking at classes per se yet, because I think our next round of testing is going to be base system with skills in place, base mechanics with skills in place. In on top of that, because we're getting these skills in place, I'm spending some more time building out what combat's going to look like. We do have some challenges in terms of combat and damage. Right now, just a straight the way we're doing it today with that quick and dirty combat, which the guy who wrote up his thing, he kept trying to say, "Look, guys, we're not testing combat." I know you're right. That's a good point, but we're not testing combat. Weren't testing combat, but there were some interesting things that came out of it, including how much damage you could do in a single attack. I don't know if that's a problem. It may not be a problem, but we're going to have to play test that some more to get a better feel for it. We're also going to have to better understand what the impact of weapon modifiers are, what the difference of strength modifiers are, and how this is going to impact the gameplay as we go through, right? So I really think that that is something that is we're going to have to balance, right? We're not going to get right off the bat, right? Your guys are going to get out there and start doing some combats, and you'll be like, yeah, no one can die. We all just go home because we're all exhausted, right? Or it's like, oh my God, it's a bloodbath here, right? So that's the thing we're going to have to look at. So again, we're looking at doing that skill system that spreads out. We're looking at doing the combat system. And the last thing is that I'm going to expand out the attributes. One of the things I wanted to try was what happens if we go with the full 9 attribute set. Now, for those of you who don't know, we've got things sort of grouped into these 3 groups. The last one I'm not thrilled with right now. We've been calling it spirit, but it actually contains both some wisdom type abilities and spirit abilities and awareness, and kind of not a catch-all, but they fit together. They make sense, but they don't seem to make sense when you call it spirit. But regardless, splitting those out, because that's one of the things that we looked at, was having that split out as we go along. So I'm working on that as well, so that we can have those full attributes set, determining how you figure out the attributes. One thing I still don't know, and I'm looking forward to hearing feedback on, is what we think about the range of attributes. Should we have a wider range? Should it be, say, 2 to 5 for characters, for our average player characters? 2 to 7 to 10. I mean, what are we looking at here? Not just the attribute, but the attribute plus skill. Right now, we've been playing with this concept of a 6 being sort of that sweet spot. And I don't know if it is. And that's what I want to hear from all of you. I'm struggling a little bit when we're running our game, not because it's not working, but because my brain struggles with such low numbers. It's all there is to it, right? I'm used to a lot bigger numbers. And I think that that's a tricky thing for us, right? Now I'm going to stop for a minute, take a pause on my nonstop talk about all of that, my fire hose of information about what I've been working on for you guys. But let me take a look at a couple of things. Michael Garrett made some good comments here, and I'm going to share those. And like I said, I always will read these out loud, not because you guys are unable to read them, but because for anyone who's just listening at their desk, they don't have to stop and read, right, if they're not actually watching. So what Michael had said was this: is I was thinking about adding a special ability to the MOs for the playtest I'm running tomorrow night, so that I can test out the spellcasting rules module for cleric and wizard MOs. That's awesome. I think that sounds great. I mean, I would even encourage you to say cleric and wizards might have something special, but that doesn't mean you can't have a cool stunt or ability for your non-wizard characters. Now, keeping in mind that the warrior, for example, we've suggested have a +1 to their action score for combat, so they kind of have a thing already. But I'll be very excited to hear how that works and how you guys play that out, because I know there's already been a fair amount of talk on Discord about how will magic work, right? So yeah, that'll be really interesting to hear. I'm really looking forward to that. But in the meantime, yeah, I'm very, very pleased with this. We'll probably keep using the Temple of Modron. I know that a bunch of you have probably played it or run it, and I apologize for that. You're certainly welcome to just ignore it, but I'm going to keep converting it because it feels like it's useful to have something to start with. If I'm wrong about that, if everyone's like going, yeah, dude, that was worthless to us, we don't keep doing it, be sure to let me know. Then I won't keep prepping that. But I'm going to prep a few more rooms of the temple so that we can utilize them, especially because the rooms coming up have a decent amount of combat, and we can get into some goblin fighting and things like that and sort of get a feel for how the combat plays out. But I am looking forward to seeing how that plays. Also, we're going to have some basic equipment. I'm going to focus primarily on basic combat gear for our characters. Just because, again, we want to start getting that combat balance worked out, but we'll take it from there and see what we can do. The other thing, too, is I do want to remind folks that a lot of you guys are loving this so far, and I am thrilled that you're loving what we're putting together. If you don't love it, I still want to hear. I want to know what's not working for you, how it's not working, what we can do. Because remember that one of our goals here, it's not to make everyone happy. That's impossible, right? We're just not going to be able to do it. Our consulting designer feedback kind of shows the wide range of feedback we're going to get. But the thing is that we are asking all of you to help us make the best game we can. Maybe it's not the perfect game, but we still want it to be the best it can. And part of that is hearing from folks who pieces just aren't working. Even if we can't make it so that you love it and it works for you, the things that don't work for you are often great, really great examples of areas where maybe we haven't thought things through as much. And it doesn't bother the folks who like it as much. They can kind of overlook it. But for folks who don't, they notice it more. But if we can smooth it out, maybe it's better for everybody across the board. So we're really looking forward to getting that feedback from all of you. Again, survey is coming this weekend. I promise a 2-week survey. It's coming out this weekend. We're going to hear what you guys have to say about it. So if you haven't had a chance to read through it or play test it, please do. Absolutely something that, we want to hear what you have to think about it. And then once we do our revision, we're going to be sending that to some of our consulting designers. Part of that revision, by the way, is some feedback. Steve Long gave me a ton of great feedback that I'm working on and trying to figure out how to utilize to improve the system and make it a better system and a stronger system. And again, we'll hear from you guys as well. Oh, I almost forgot. I have this very special treat coming up in the next few weeks. Remember I told you that I met a couple of folks, academics, at a medieval conference in in Michigan? Well, they're actually said they'd be willing to come on the show and do their presentation about the evolution of rule system over time. It's very cool. I mean, it's hardcore game designer, longtime fan hobbyists of gaming information. And I think you guys are going to just love seeing this. So I'm working with them. We haven't picked a date yet, but man, I think it's going to be awesome to have them on the show. And that's going to be a special treat coming up in the near future. So more of this coming up. Things are going to be starting to move a little bit faster. I was talking to Sean King about design today as well. So we're starting to actually get into some of that. Very fun to be getting into the real stuff here. So that's it for tonight, folks. We are pretty much out of time. I got about a whole minute left. Again, come to the Discord, ask us questions, send me emails, visit the Kickstarter. I'm going to do an update there as well where I talk about some of these things. But in the meantime, hopefully you keep having fun gaming. Hopefully you do some play testing and have some great adventures. And I look forward to hearing about them. So thanks, everybody, and good night.